So from my experience, I played against Aragorn twice at the Relic Fest warm-up. Being on the plate definitely helps, as always with the deck. If you can somewhat master the matchup against Spider-Man, you don't have to be feared or scared of Aragorn. You definitely want to win the game prior to Aragorn coming down. Oh, a pending is a very good answer to the Utopia Sprawl.
Definitely.
We just talked about that earlier, about the fact that prismatic ending is not seen that often. Yeah, and I can imagine Sebastian was probably putting a lot of hope into that Utopia Sprawl. And if you don't have like a follow-up turn 2 play now, it's difficult to maintain enough pressure. Because next
Yeah.
turn you do not have the like you can play Tifa, but then you have to expect a counterspell.
Yeah, counterspell and if not, interaction that you need to somehow answer as well.
Yeah, exactly. But by default, I always thought it's quite an interesting matchup. It's pretty balanced. Spider-Man is definitely harder to defeat. This is also a matchup in which you usually don't consider to swap your commander. Tifa is fast enough. There are actually two matchups against Deadpool and Spider-Man in which you consider to bring down a Sandman instead. And this is that's good. That's good. That's a line that you can do. With the mutagenic growth, you're definitely bolt proof. You could also bluff an Elvish Spirit Guide. And yeah, maybe Jin has something else
Yeah, I mean, he
ready.
definitely does play more answers. He has a
Yeah.
march, he has a swords, he has an oust. And he has
He
creatures
still
to deal with it
has
as well. Yeah. Could untap and
Gal
Skyclave here. Oh, no, never mind. Yeah.
the Galvanic Discharge. Okay, in response, yeah, he does not have to pay the energy, obviously, so he keeps 3 energy, which makes sense. Now is a question. The Verdant Catacombs was gone. I see a Frenzied Bellow. Apologize for that. We have a fetch land, so we have 1 trigger on stack.
Tracking for a second trigger. Beautiful fetch lands here.
Yeah,
Oh, stifling the fetch land.
that's
That
good.
is spicy.
You can also stifle Tifa's trigger, but you would most likely stifle the fetch land instead.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have a Frenzied Bellow hitting for 5. Yeah, not bad. Stifle definitely does the job here. And it seems that Sebastian does not have more pump spells would do the job. So what do we
Yeah.
have here? We have a Guardian Augmenter, a Berserk, and an Insidious Fungus.
So no lands currently.
Yeah, that's
The
rough.
Berserk has potential of 6. Something that would also, like a crazy draw would be an untapped fetch land, uh, which he could crack, and with the triggers on the stack, cast the Guardian Augmenter to have Tifa grow to 12 power.
Yeah.
And he also has the Baloth in play to respond to counterspells. That would be very powerful. I don't think that's very likely because he's already spent 2 untapped fetches. He only has 3 left to draw. But he's also has the ability
4.
to
No, in this situation, 3. In this situation, 3. But
yeah,
the Fatal
this
Passage would also for up from 4 lands on. Yeah.
true. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, let's see. There is
Well,
a
he could also draw a Ghost Squatter. No,
yeah,
it's a Scythe Cat Cub.
yeah, the Safecat
So
Cup is not enough in that situation. That's rough. I mean, you could get there. Sometimes you're just not drawing the right cards at the right time. But for as long as your creatures are on board, you and you can provide more,
yeah,
which he does. It kind of puts Aragorn in a difficult spot because
exactly. He also has like uh with the Baloth in play, um, there is high potential for his whole hand to be dead here. Hmm.
yeah,
And if he yeah, so the opponent he's not quite at 13 anymore. He was hit for 4 last turn, so he should be at 9, which is with a land and a Scythecat Cub in play, definitely a doable life total.
yeah.
Um,
If it we need a land drop here. It's not a land drop. The Sylvan Library? That's correct? It looks like a Sylvan Library. Or something else.
so he could attack with Baloth and Cub, um, to trade for the Aragorn and get the Monarch,
Yeah.
which I think is probably the to trade with Berserk for those cards. With no land being drawn here, I feel like that's the best way to go. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure what he drew.
yes.
But it's
Why
definitely
is he
not a
at
land.
6?
Otherwise we would have seen a direct
Oh, 6 from the Gitaxian probe,
true. 7.
right?
7 actually. So 9 minus 2, 7. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
current. Yeah, it would have life would have been easy with a land here, definitely. Just pumping Tifa twice, putting both counters onto Tifa would
With
be
a
3,
fetch land, yeah.
6.
If he draws
Exactly. 12.
a basic land or anything, then
Yeah, I mean, but
that
the deck
messes up.
runs like 20-ish fetch lands, so
Yeah,
or 15 at least, so it's not too unlikely that that happens. There could have also been. There are some nasty techs in the deck. Escape Tunnel, for example, a really good one to make creatures unblockable if they are
yeah.
at low power.
Which they
Yeah,
can
and I mean,
be at the point where the uh, escape tunnel is activated before the power doubles.
hmm,
So yeah, we will see what's this. If he uses the Berserk on the Baloth, or if he blocks the Cub and he uses the Berserk.
yeah, I think you have to use the Berserk to deal with Aragon. Unfortunately, you have to. And I was just about to say, it's a bit of a hard decision whether to block the Beleth or to block the Cup. It depends on Aragon's hand. Here we have the Insidious Fungus, drawing a card for the Monarch end of turn. And now that the Cup is gone, it means that you have to find more ways, like more natural ways, quote unquote, to boost Tifa again.
He drew a forest for turn.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's not too bad. That's the start. I mean, in combination with the fungus, that could bring down another land. It's definitely something, I would say. Here we have Denick. Okay, interesting. I would probably not see this card in today's metagame, to be honest, but seems to work out for him.
It's a great card against Creebait, which
Very true, yeah.
Tazagor has been playing recently.
Or Cling to Dust, right?
Or Cling to Dust as well, yeah. Great card against your own Snapcaster Mage. I've had that happen before. Not a great feeling.
So yeah, I mean, now what you can do is it's a very offensive play, and you have to go through potential answers, but in response to the landfall trigger, flash in the Guardian Augmenter. Then you're open to an interaction towards the Belov, which means at that point the Augmenter could be countered again.
Yeah, but that's a pretty specific combination of cards, which also, cost tempo, cost stuff to do, and having the monarchy and now finding lands puts you in a bit of a better position, I would say. So I
Oh, and
think
here we
I
have
would.
another fetch land. Okay.
Oh, okay, but not the best fetch land in this situation.
I mean, it could be enough. It's
If he has a 1-mana pump spell, yeah, I would say.
yeah, and the deck runs
Yeah, okay.
quite a few, right?
It
So
does go for the Augmenter.
yeah, that
And
I think that's fine because
yeah,
it puts your opponent in a spot to handle both, even 3 things at the same time. Oh, no, not 3, but let's say if you can handle the Belov, if you don't handle the Belov, you can't handle the Augmenter. What else you could do is you
I
can
mean, he
handle
can
Tifa
handle the
instead
Augmenter. If he can
by
handle creatures on the board, the Augmenter itself doesn't have hexproof. And if you kill the Augmenter before the trigger resolves, then the Tifa is a 2/2.
you could do that. That's true. But what I
Yeah.
meant is like if you only have counter spells in hand, then
Yep.
you definitely have to find a way to get rid of the Frenzied Belov first.
Yeah, and that is something we're expecting. There are things that get around this inability to counter stuff. He does play Reprieve. He does play Ang and Aven Interrupter, Sink into
Yeah,
Stupor.
that's
Sinking the
brutal.
Tifa
Oh, that's
does
brutal.
hurt,
Yeah, definitely.
and I don't think you give up the Baloth protection into the Denic just to offer that trade.
No,
So
I wouldn't do so either.
so now you just sit on the Monarchy, hope the opponent doesn't have a 5th land.
A 6 land there. I
Because
think they have.
a 6th
I
land,
mean,
yeah. Yeah, probably. So redeploying Aragorn might be really backbreaking here for Tifa.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I meant at the beginning. You definitely have to see to, put enough pressure early on. I can tell you for sure the turning point was already having the prismatic ending for the Utopia Sprawl. That was very, very relevant. I
Yeah,
can imagine that Sebastian kept the entire hand because he thought, well, there's really not much interaction for that. And
yeah,
I have more or less a safe turn 2 cast for Tifa here.
yeah.
So that had a very big impact on the entire pace of the game.
I mean, he had ending into Galvanic Discharge into Stifle, which is a very good sequence.
That's also true. Yeah, yeah.
And this is a very strong, I would say, also mental line of saying, okay, I'll get the Monarchy if you don't block, and if you do block,
I will still get the
then I
Monarch.
could still have a land to get the Monarchy back. So
Yeah,
he decided to give up his counterspell protection to keep the Monarchy and got punished for it. That
yeah,
feels really bad.
yeah. That's true. But I mean, yeah, you can't do much about it, but it's also not the end of the world. Deploying a Tifa, which is 3/4, for as long as you can protect the Augmenter, and next turn you have at least two landfall triggers. If you activate the fungus and activate the panorama. And then there is another land in Sebastian's hand, so
Yeah, but Aragorn is going to be attacking for 4 life gain.
yeah, you have to
Um,
fight through 8 additional life. That's true. Then
yeah.
again, if you have one of the important pump spells, there's a Become Immense. Targeting the fungus? Oh, that's cool. It's
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Battle at the
Interesting line.
bridge. Also, targeting the fungus means if there is something like some free form of removal, then that'll go after the fungus and not the augmenter. And Aragorn making it to the command zone again, taking back also beating for what is this? 2,
Help
3,
help me on the fight spell,
9.
please. I can't remember how the card is called. It's
Is
so
it Battle
annoying.
at the Bridge?
No, it's something with
Oh,
Bridgeworks Battle, isn't that? Yeah,
yeah,
Bridgeworks
maybe.
Battle. Yeah. That's how it is. But we have, yeah, that's quite a big combat step here. Getting back the Monarch. That's definitely a good line because,
Yeah.
there could be Parallax Wave, but it takes 2 more turns for Jin to get back the Monarch here, I would assume.
And he's at 2
Mm,
life now, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that makes
exactly.
fetching difficult. You can fetch, but he's got 2 potentially lethal creatures on the board now. There is a bunch of stuff. I think that's a Lithomantic Barrage in his hand as well, if I see that correctly. No, it's not. No, there's no
Which
Lithomantic Barrage in the
wouldn't
deck.
do much in this matchup. It can kill a dork, but right now it
It's a
can't do
Fury.
anything.
Oh, there's a Fury.
Well, the Fury is a very different thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going through what could happen. Jesus, that's disgusting. And he decides to pitch the Fury instead of hard casting. Okay. I think that's a lack of experience in this particular matchup because apart from Frenzied Bellows, there is rarely a lineup with which. I mean, I can see that he wants to keep up counter magic to handle Tifa, which seems to be the plan. That's not the case. I would not understand why you would not play the Fury here.
There is a Prismatic Vista, which puts him to 1 if he cracks it.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that Tifa is going to be able to push for 1 damage this turn, and even the turn after that is going to be hard. So against a counterspell, does not have a 4th land to deploy Tifa for a second time from the command zone this game. Birds of Paradise is
Dangerous.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Does he missing his? Oh no, he's got his Monarch draw. Hopefully he remembers to take it.
I think the opponent is fetching a response.
Yeah, he
Oh,
didn't
there's a
signal to the
Banshee tongue.
Monarchy.
Ah,
Ooh, that is.
that's
I think that was
problematic.
his last card, and that
It
is a
was the last
strong
card, yeah.
last card.
Yeah.
Um,
Sebastian finds another a Capenna fetch, an auto fetch.
so he's drawing
Manchitong,
1 card of this Wan Tong, but it is a 4/4.
unfortunately the better bird in this situation,
True,
right?
true.
Which also means that he's definitely getting back the Monarch.
And it also means that
Even
additional land, like if he plays Tifa to pump it.
Arena of Glory does the job.
Oh,
That's brutal. Yeah, lots of good top decks here on Aragon's side, but that used to be the overall experience, right? The deck is stuffed with good cards.
yeah, absolutely. And the quality only gets better as time goes on.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
are you guys playing the same list?
I think. No, I made some changes now with Aragorn. I'm not sure if Sebastian did that too. Not
What
with
do you mean
I mean with Tazigo. With Tazigo in the
Kazuo? Okay.
metagame, I did some changes. I'm not sure if he does that too. I'm not playing the fungus anymore, for example. Oh, decides to go for the Arbor Elf instead. Yeah, that's okay. Let's seize the mental misstep. Again, nice to have the mental misstep here.
Yeah, I mean, a hand with 6 cards against a Tifa hand with 7 cards can be pretty tough. So we will
Mm,
see. Um, if there's a Swords to Plowshares, then the Invigorate does not protect the Tifa. But if there is a Bolt type card, then he can Invigorate to protect her, which he does do.
yeah.
There's no island in play for a daze.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like that. It's. I mean, I don't see the rest of his hand, but the reason he does it is because he drew an Embiggen, which, in addition to a fetch land, provides 20 damage. I think the life count is not correct because he's at 20, right? Getting 3 life from the Invigorate cost.
That's probably true, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. No, he paid for the Mental Misstep as well.
Yes, going
Mental
to.
Misstep, Shock,
Oh,
Sacred
there was a shock.
Foundry,
True, true, true. Yeah, yeah, okay.
and Fetch. So
Then
she
19 is
should be at
correct.
18.
Yeah, now being at 18.
Oh, there's no Fetch for that. No, never mind.
It was a
19
island
is
cycling.
correct. Yeah.
So here we have an auto fetch from Capenna, which brings Tifa up to 20 life. To 20 power. And Sebastian probably has a protection spell in the back of his hand. There is a stifle, and that's something. Oh, Jesus. You cannot interact with that. Stifling the auto fetch again. It is.
10 power that he's
Yeah.
swinging with now.
It is hilarious to see Stifle 2 times attacking Tifa on an angle that you can't really interact with.
Well, and I mean, now he's also shields down. So if there is another
Yeah.
removal spell for the Tifa, he is suddenly in a very dangerous position.
Yeah, definitely. Arena of Glory again? No. The Fairy bringing down.
Bounce Tifa. She has no haste. Also turns off protection spells.
Yeah. Yeah, that will be a very rough game again.
Yeah, Stifle doing the job 2 games in a row here. Definitely strong.
Yeah.
We have a Rancor and a go. So he wants to put him to the test again. If there is no interaction, he has the terrace. What is it called? Looking for the artwork. The Shire Terrace in hand. So
Mm-hmm.
if there is no interaction, then we could see a big Tifa swing next turn. However,
Would not be enough.
um, Aragorn can come down, give the monarchy, and trade again.
Yeah, and Jin would go down to 1. Because
Yeah,
the
if
trade.
he attacks with if he plays the Aragorn, if he
Yeah.
if he's thinking that it's a sign of weakness, there's no land
Oh,
in the
oh,
hand.
it would even be worse. I just realized because you play the land and you activate the arena, you gain 4 life, attack. Aragorn has vigilance, and then you gain another 4 life. So you basically have to fight 8 more damage,
Yeah,
which is doable if you find another pump spell. Right now, it looks like that's not the case.
he could find a crop rotation. That's a Sandman in hand, if I see it correctly,
Yeah, that's
at
true.
the front there.
Yeah.
So Shire Terrace and Sandman is the hand. But yeah, that Stifle, that's so much early interaction. We had the Lightning Bolt, we had the Stifle, we had the interaction for the Middle Mystic for the Arbor Elf. Um, and the Teferi is also just backbreaking.
Yeah, definitely. So exert or no exert? That's a question. Seems that he feels safe at 9. From my experience against Tifa, I would have definitely exerted here. Because, yeah. And,
What lands are there? Or what?
ooh,
He could spell in. He could draw
okay.
any pump spell, right?
Yeah, that's the escape tunnel now. That doesn't do the job anymore because Tifa is at 3.
Ah, that's
Ah,
unfortunate.
very unfortunate. But it doesn't matter. He has it.
Does he? Yes, 12, 12,
Yes,
12
it's
damage.
exactly 12 damage.
Well, no. Well, no, it's not.
Why?
It Because Aragorn is still a 12 power wall. It still costs 8 damage to get through
Yeah,
Aragorn. He
that's true.
gains
Yeah, yeah,
life,
right.
and Aragorn has 4 toughness.
Yeah, yeah.
And the land coming into play off the he has to play he can't even play the Sandman afterwards because it costs mana to crack the terrace.
Yeah.
So he just has to. Yeah, it does really feel bad.
Yeah, sometimes things just don't come together, right? You can't really do much about that. So having the trigger here, Tifa goes up to 6 and has to be a block. Otherwise, gaining back 2 life.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does also make sense to just let that trade happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And save that for a later turn, right? And now you can
there's
cast
a
the
monarch.
Sandman, and I think you can even go for the Rancor again, showing that. I mean, you
I
can
mean,
leave it
yeah.
up. Yeah, I mean, you can also leave it up actually. Like,
Well, I don't think the opponent is thinking, what if he has something that goes through my Teferi? Um, I don't think that's a strong consideration. So I would say
I mean, the
go
Teferi
for
is
the
not
Rancor.
too relevant here.
What do you mean?
The
Well,
thing is, rather, you have the Monarch trigger, you draw a card. If you draw a protection spell, right now you can bolt the Sandman. It's not the best line, but it's possible. If you bolt it, it will end up in the graveyard, and there's no pressure from Tifa next turn. You can only cast, and that's what he does. So betting on a protection spell,
Well,
or
but
like,
the protection spell
oh,
doesn't
it
do
doesn't do
anything
anything
because
against
the
the fairy.
Teferi is in
Sorry,
play.
yeah, absolutely right. So yeah, then the Rancor would have been the right line. That's true.
I mean, he does have the ability to exert the arena to get back the monarch, which the Sandman is kind of blocking, but like there's a bunch of creatures that could come down with haste in the Aragorn deck that either have flying or on ETB deal with the Sandman.
Yeah,
So yeah, like a Solitude or a Skyclave. There's a couple of cards that don't do it either, but yeah, do you know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. So for 3,
There's a Voice of Victory,
yeah, I see that.
which he will probably cast while exerting the arena.
Oh, he can
Oh,
exert the
yeah,
fairy and the voice, right? Oh no, okay. Interesting. Getting back the Monarch. And yeah.
Very Mastermind, also a very cool card in Aragorn because it gives you, if the opponent gets the Monarchy, you draw a card every time he draws a card from the Monarchy.
Yeah. Very true. So if it isn't for a Legolas Quick Reflexes,
That would be a strong card right now.
yeah, would be very, very strong.
But yeah, he can play another land with the Sandman, make it a 4/4. The Rancor makes it a
6/4.
6/4. And if he has one of the 4-mana pump spells, then one of the 4 damage pump spells. Pendelhaven isn't it? 4 mana. Tifa. No more lies on the Tifa.
Difficult situation here, I think. Going on Teferi. Yeah.
Was threatening
I
to
think
bounce next turn.
yeah, that's true.
But
Sandman is definitely one of those nasty creatures for the control decks or for the tempo decks. Very
yeah,
hard to deal with.
I feel like the white-based control decks, they have such an abundance of exile removal
That's true. That's true.
that it's not that often that it's relevant.
Then again, there are a couple of cards coming from Aragorn that could do the job here. I could not do the job actually because they are burn based. Yeah. The Fable is not doing it either.
It does feel like he's very shields down with the Fable now.
Yeah. It's a royal treatment. I'm not entirely sure. But it
He
will
can
be
protect stuff
super
again.
hard. That's a Rancor. Will be cast first, I guess. So we have a 6/4. One colorless. Oh, an Adventuring Gear. That could do something here. But why would you not cast the green mana here? Use the green mana.
Well, he has the escape tunnel, right? So he does
Yes.
have the lethal pump.
That is true.
With the escape tunnel.
Yeah.
3 cards in hand, but not that much happening from what it seems like. Maybe Tifa steals the game here.
I would hope so. We want to see a game 3. Well, think about that.
Yeah, he's
like,
putting his
I
hand
don't
on the
like that.
forehead.
I don't like that. That's 11 damage, and that's a game 3. Yeah. I have to say, much more of a fan of the baby Choco these days because it sneaks so many wins. People simply don't respect it.
This card is also probably very good in the deck, right? Though, especially if you find the sequencing to get it on the board with a Tifa together.
Which card are you talking about right now?
Traveling Chocobo.
Of course it is. It is a really good card. But yeah, it needs some setup. It does provide a very easy win, even with like small boosts only. And most likely it eats direct interaction.
Does it double the Capenna fetches? No, you have to probably sacrifice the Capenna fetch to.
It does double it, but the second trigger doesn't do anything because you can't sack it another time.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
So there's a Gather
Unholy Heat.
Courage.
Oh, Gather
Nice, nice,
Courage.
nice.
Very cool protection spell.
Yeah.
And a Bristly Bill in this deck, very strong. As with this, maybe not as good as the Scythe Cat Cub, but
But very close to it. Very
wow,
close.
Mental Misstep as well. And a Mutagenic Growth. Serves them right.
Yes. The fact that we have the Phyrexian mana battle here is quite nice. Free spell fiesta, exactly. I like to see that. So, for anyone who is not aware of mutagenic growth, Phyrexian 2, and it grants you another +2/+2, which was probably not the plan, but exactly for that reason, I like those spells.
Yeah.
Especially Gather
I mean,
Courage
you
is
would probably
something that
as many of
most,
them as you could.
yeah, I mean, in a current metagame, I feel like with so many Spider-Mans running around, I feel like those cards are very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. Putting away the 4th. You can see that. It's too early in the game to make use of the card. And it will most likely end up being useless. Because you have to survive a couple of turns in order to make use of that. A Riverpire Verge. What are you going to do with 3 mana? The thing is, if you have to have another interaction spell for Brizzly. You pass the turn without dealing with Brizzly, which is not the case. You definitely have a problem here. Because then, first landfall trigger comes in, it resolves. If it's a fetch land, your opponent presents a 4th counter, which means you're completely out of, or mostly out of bolt range or burn range. Unholy Heat is cast already. So here we have a Tifa cast.
I would be surprised to see a wash away here. He might have a subtlety in hand.
Is it? I think the
Oh,
top
there's a
card is a
Force
Force
Spike.
Spike, right? Yeah.
Does make sense to cast. I feel like the game winning spells are not going to be cast with mana missing from
That's
now
true.
on.
Yeah. And also you
And
steal away the landfall trigger.
yeah, you steal away the Windswept Teeth fetch.
And that's what the Stifle basically did the previous 2 games, right?
Yeah, there is a
Also,
Verdant Catacombs as the front card in the hand there, if
yeah,
I can see it correctly.
yeah. I mean, it was also taking care of another land coming down, let's be fair, which had a very big impact in both games.
True, the missing mana was different from what this Force Spike is doing.
Yeah, but still, it's
Um,
taking away 1 landfall trigger, which is definitely good.
and it also takes away the option of, if he has another removal spell for the Tifa, the option of that removal spell being interacted with by a hexproof spell.
Yeah, true. So
Yeah, we have the Chocobo plus the Verdant Catacombs in hand here,
yeah,
which without anything else will pump the Tifa to a 2, 4, 8, 16 power creature.
exactly. You better have a subtlety here. There is the Misty Rainforest. 2 triggers on stack. I would have probably checked the top card first with the Chocobo. Could have been another
Yeah.
fetch land here,
Yeah.
saving yourself. This is something that you miss most of the time. What is that? I can't recognize a pump spell. I really can't recognize the artwork.
Snakeskin Veil, they're saying?
Is it? Might be.
which puts
Because
Tifa to 32 instead of 16. So,
yeah, because I'm only. That is correct. Okay, that's an artwork that I've never seen, honestly. It's this one here. Because I'm playing the purple one,
yeah,
but it's this one.
it's the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, or the what's it called?
Yeah, it's Outlaws
Foundations.
of Foundations in this case. Yeah. Okay, that's a more or less clean finish. The 2 free spells definitely did the job.